and hospitals. Sir James served as Lieutenant Governor of Victoria before his appointment as Governor in April 1997, a position he served with distinction and grace, and one that his family, friends and Victorians can be truly proud of. He went on to become the Commissioner for Italy. Many of his achievements came as firsts. He was Victoria's first Catholic Governor, the first Governor to come from a non-English speaking background. He made a lasting contribution to our state through his work in the law and also his long-standing public service in the variety of positions that I have outlined. He lived a remarkable life and gave many migrants who came after him someone to look up to, someone to aspire to. Sir James Gobbo helped shape our state for the better and has given us all a model for a life of service and a life well lived. On behalf of the government, this chamber and the people of Victoria, I extend our heartfelt condolences to his wife, Lady Shirley Gobbo, their 5 children and their families.
Sir Davis.
President, I desire to associate myself and the opposition with this motion and indicate Sir James Gobbo is a great loss. He was a friend to many of us. Many of us knew him very well. He was a selfless individual. And I do want to reiterate some of the points that the Leader of the Government has made. He was born in Carlton on the 22nd of March 1931. Italian parents, and as the Leader said, for many years they did not know English, and it took some years for them to settle here permanently. But it is a migration story, a fantastic migration story of a family who have made an enormous impact on Australia and on Victoria in particular. In 1944, he was accepted into Xavier College. He became a member of the Xavier College crew that won the 1948 Associated Public Heads of the School, Heads of the River. After leaving Xavier, he studied law at the University of Melbourne. He was at Newman, awarded a Rhodes Scholarship, and he was very successful at Oxford as well. He married Shirley in 1957. They had 5 children, and as Ms Crozier and I know well, James Gobbo, the Junior, was a Liberal candidate in Bentley in 2006, and he did a very good job and is also a firm friend. But Sir James served as Lieutenant Governor from 1995 and was later appointed as Governor. But it's also his career before that is interesting. His early appointment, as the Leader has outlined, as a QC, eventual appointment to the bench, and his very significant contribution, particularly into some obscure areas of law, the Land Acquisition Act. When that Act came in 86, there was a whole series of cases, and he presided over a number of those cases, making significant contributions to jurisprudence in that area. So I think he is a person who has made quite a unique contribution to the law in that way on the Supreme Court. And it's interesting, actually, I was just going back and looking at the farewells in 1994 from the Bar Association newsletter. And, you can read, as you read through that, the warmth towards him. And I think that this is true of everywhere that he went, whether it was in the school sector, in the multicultural sector, in the legal sector, his time as Governor, and many of us had quite a bit to do with him in his period as Governor. His decency, his warmth came through quite amazingly. And I can remember, many times at functions he would come up to you and he would move you to the side and talk to you quietly. He'd like to engage one-on-one, and he always had some pearls of wisdom to impart to new MPs, and to engage in a way that was respectful, thoughtful, and his long wisdom came through. So an Italo-Australian who made such a remarkable contribution, the sweep as Rhodes Scholar, QC, on the bench, Lieutenant Governor, but remained in community life after he was moved. And I do want to put on record, a measure of sadness, which I think is typified by the 8th of August 2000, the Herald Sun, where Steve Bracks decided not to allow the appointment of Sir James to continue. And I think that was unfortunate. I don't want to labour it, but I think that was unfortunate. But I think Sir James continued on beyond that with a lot of community activity. I know the Caritas links and the links to a number of other key charities I think were just fantastic. So I, for one, personally greatly regret his passing, and I see him as an absolutely exemplary Victorian.
Dr. Barch.
Thank you very much, President. I too want to make a brief contribution regarding this motion to lend my wholehearted support also to the motion that the Attorney has put forward, endorse her sentiments and also the sentiments of the Leader of the Opposition. Sir James's achievements are quite staggering, and we're all aware of his family story, which only make his achievements all the better, but hopefully also say something wonderful about this state. We're all, as members of this place, as so many other Victorians are, deeply proud of our migrant roots and our multicultural heritage. We can always aspire to do better, to include other and new groups of Victorians, but I do think that the story of Sir James and his remarkable record of achievement is something that we should hold up, as the Attorney said, as a beacon of hope for all Victorians. She noted something that I think is also quite significant and was seen as a significant barrier at the time, and that was Sir James' Catholicism at a time of intense sectarianism, unlike our time today, thankfully. Again, this was another barrier that Sir James had to overcome, but did overcome with his usual and characteristic warmth and goodwill. It's been noted that as a barrister, as a silk, as a judge on the Supreme Court, he has left a huge legacy in Victorian jurisprudence. Mr Davis referred to his work that is legendary regarding the Land Acquisition and Compensation Act. He left a whole series of other eloquent judgments that will guide our understanding of the law into the future. But I think, most of all, it's not Sir James' remarkable intellect, nor even his achievements, but really his character that most Victorians think about and look to when we think about Sir James, and his embrace of and love for our state, our multicultural state, should be something that continues to give us hope into the future, President.
Sir Rich Phillips. Ms. Crozier.
Thank you, President. I rise to also speak to this motion, and in rising to speak to the condolence motion for the late, the Honourable Sir James Gobbo, Companion of the Order of Australia, Commander of the Royal Victorian Order, Queen's Counsel. I acknowledge and commemorate the life of an extraordinary Victorian. As others have just spoken about, the many achievements and the barriers that he had to overcome, but the remarkable story of his family who came to this country, who contributed in such a remarkable way, and then gave the opportunity to Sir James to really achieve and excel in everything that he did. Sir James' life has been extensively detailed by many in this Parliament, in the Commonwealth Parliament, the media, the judiciary and elsewhere, and as I've also said, his life has been one that has been so well led. Sir James was born in Carlton, and then the family moved back to Italy, as others have said, and then they came back and he went on to be educated at Xavier College and then became a Rhodes Scholar. He was an erudite and articulate barrister, justice and then governor of this great state. Sir James dedicated himself to public service and duty in so many ways, and it's doubtful we will see many more people with the character of Sir James. As the Italian newspaper Il Globo said, a piece of our history has gone, and I think that certainly with Sir James, many achievements. Victoria has lost a great man, and I'd send my condolences to his wife, his children and his extended family at this time.
Sir Rich Phillips.
Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, I too rise to support the motion of condolence to Sir James Gobbo. Like many, I was unable to attend the state funeral due to the sittings of this place, but I have listened to the wonderful eulogies which were delivered by Jeremy Gobbo, by Alan Myers and by the Governor. And those eulogies talked about Sir James's achievements, but also his contributions to society. We of course know and we've heard that he was a Rhodes Scholar, that he was a Queen's Counsel, he was a Supreme Court Judge, he was a Knight Bachelor, that he was a Knight of the Order of St John, and that he was Governor of Victoria. But he was also a man of strong Christian and Catholic faith, who did so much work for the community outside his official roles, be that at the highest levels, working on immigration policy with the Commonwealth Government, or even at a direct level, providing warm clothing to homeless people on cold nights on the streets of Melbourne. I first had the pleasure of meeting Sir James and Lady Gobbo about 25 years ago, and one of the great traditions of this place, now lost to history, was the President's Dinner, which was an annual event where the President of the day would host and fund a dinner for all members of the Legislative Council, for the clerks of the Council, and the Governor of Victoria would be the guest of honour. And the attendance at these President's Dinners of Sir James was always a highlight. He was a very humble speaker, but he was a very engaging speaker. And he was a great storyteller. And as Mr Davis reflected, Sir James would always enjoy having a quiet word in a corner, this is in room K, a quiet word in the corner of the room with new members of Parliament to talk about what they were doing, what they should do in their duties as new public officials, and to give advice and guidance. And those were wonderful occasions which, as I said, have regrettably been lost to history. Sir James's departure from Government House was disappointing for many. And Mr Davis remarked on the circumstances which frankly did no credit to Steve Bracks. But Sir James and Lady Gobbo left Government House without rancour or bitterness and continued to serve the people of Victoria. For more than 20 years, Sir James served the people of Victoria in other roles after his post-Government House life. And we're all the better for that service. In the words of Alan Myers in his eulogy, Sir James was an inspiration to do good.
Bruce Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr President. Other speakers have covered most of the things that I might have wanted to add to this condolence motion. But can I say that there are some people in life that you meet that actually put your entire career in perspective. They make you stop and think, why have I not done more? Why have I not had the energy that this person has had when they have contributed so much? You know, Sir Justice Gobbo was an extraordinary man, an extraordinary Victorian, one of the great treasures of this state. His contribution as a migrant who was an exemplar for so many other people who followed him and who, you know, particularly from migrant communities, enter fields of academia today, the law, science, education, health areas and so forth. He was one of those people who, in many ways, both directly and indirectly, has mentored many of those people. This was a person who was very humble. Mr Rich Phillips spoke about his contribution to supporting the homeless. And it's interesting that even in his 80s, even within weeks of his actual passing, he was out there on the streets of Melbourne looking after homeless people, ensuring that they were okay. And in fact, this man who had been an extraordinary person in the law and then went on in our system of government as governor, and an exceptional governor at that, this man would actually sit down beside these homeless people and talk to them one-on-one. One human being to another human being. understanding and wanting to understand even better the circumstances of each of those individuals. He was a person who was prepared to provide advice, but always again quietly, always again not in an overbearing way, but to in fact share his experience, his knowledge, his wisdom, and without a doubt the context of so many other people that he came across in life. And it was a life that was lived on a very wide stage. Because not only was it the law, and not only was it as governor in that role, not only was it in terms of the support of people who were in necessitous circumstances, but he was also a great contributor to multiculturalism in this state, which is one of our greatest strengths here in Victoria. And he was one of the real champions of that multiculturalism in this state. He worked with COASIT, which was a significant organisation in the Italian community, providing a range of social services as well as language courses and so forth, and supporting people who came from Italy to settle here and start new lives in Australia. He was also involved in other areas such as palliative care and the health sector. In fact, I think the Catholic Church, whenever they had a significant leadership role, an area where they needed somebody who was to be a sound and effective person in getting an organisation moving and ensuring it was properly, it had proper governance and was able to understand the needs of or the role that it needed to play, then they would call on Sir Justice Gobbo, on Sir James Gobbo. And he was involved in many organisations. I mean, the biography, as I said, puts all of our careers into some perspective, because he was a man of great energy and a man who was a man of service to others. It was the way he lived his faith, the way he lived truly to his values, and all of us can only hope to in some way emulate some of the great work that Sir James Gobbo did on behalf of Victoria.
Thank you. Question is that this House expresses the sincere sorrow of the death on 7th of November 2021 of the Honourable Sir James Gobbo AC CVO QC, and places on record its acknowledgement of the valuable services rendered by him to the people of Victoria as Governor of Victoria from 1997 to 2000. I ask honourable members to signify their assent by rising in their places for 1 minute silence. Thank you, members. I declare the motion carried unanimously. Proceedings will now be suspended as a further mark of respect. I will resume the chair at 1 o'clock.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power and the glory are yours now and forever. Amen. We acknowledge the traditional Aboriginal owners of the land upon which we are meeting. We pay our respects to them, their culture, their elders past, present and future, and elders from other communities who may be here today. Call the Premier.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I move that this House expresses its sincere sorrow at the death of Sir James Gobbo, AC, CVO, QC, and places on record its acknowledgement of the valuable services rendered by him to the Commonwealth, the judiciary and the people of Victoria as Governor of Victoria from 1997 to 2000, Lieutenant Governor of Victoria from 1995 to 1997, and Judge of the Supreme Court of Victoria from 1978 to 1994.
Premier.
Speaker, Sir James Gobbo lived a life of service. Born to Italian parents, he spent his early childhood in Italy before migrating to Australia when he was just 7 years old. When he first arrived in Australia, he spoke not one word of English. Not one word, Speaker. And while this is not a unique factor in a typical migrant story, so many could tell a very similar story, when you consider the breadth of what Sir James Gobbo went on to achieve, the legacy he built, the lives he changed, the impact and influence that he had, it just reinforces what a remarkable life and a remarkable journey that was. His family, like so many others, came to this country with their hearts filled with hope. Hope for a better future, hope for a better life, with opportunities that would not be afforded if they had stayed in their native country. Hope for a future filled with opportunity, a better tomorrow, Speaker. But the success that Sir James Gobbo achieved from such humble beginnings did not happen on its own. It can never happen on its own. It always needs to be a combination of some good fortune, yes, but a lot of hard work, a lot of determination, a lot of sacrifice, and indeed the hard work, love and care and support of others. For Sir James Gobbo, that example, that environment, that intrinsic and critically important support came from his own mother and father, Regina and Antonio. Two determined parents, small business owners who worked tirelessly to give their son every opportunity in life. Two people who focused every day of their lives and put every dollar in their pockets toward their son's success. Two migrants who sacrificed every indulgence in their life for something bigger than themselves as individuals, their family, and, as it would turn out, their state and their nation. While today we stand here to recognise the extraordinary achievements of Sir James Gobbo, it is also a chance for us to remember the story of two remarkable Victorians, Regina and Antonio Gobbo, a shining example of all that can be achieved in a place like Victoria. And we place that acknowledgement on record for everybody, forever, Mr Speaker. Sir James Gobbo's long list of achievements started early in his life. Graduating from the University of Melbourne, he received a Rhodes Scholarship and left